Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unlabeled and Limitless. I am your host today, Lois Bainham, and I'm joined by my co host, Faye
Faye Harrison.
Harrison. Hi, Faye. Sorry. Okay, and if we just. Moment. And so, what we're going to talk about today, and thank you for joining me, we are going to continue the conversation that we were having in our last podcast, which is about attachment, belonging, relationships. But in this episode, we're actually going to take a small trip down memory lane for both of us, in that we're going to revisit a paper that we wrote during our psychology master's degree and talk about some of those themes and what it's like now to kind of retrospectively a year later go back and look at what our beliefs were, the theories that we used, and how we each approached that assignment, and how we can kind of now apply it to ourselves, our environment, etc., from a neurodivergent lens.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start by saying attachment helps us feel safe, right? But belonging helps us understand who we are. And there's a difference between having attachments, right, and feeling like we belong somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of relationship struggles, whether they're romantic, workplace relationships, friendships, etc., they live in the tension between those two things quite often, right? It's like between attachment and belonging. And as human beings, we're not just wired for attachment, right? We need to feel safe, we need to feel loved, we need to feel productive, and all of those things. So essentially, we are wired for belonging too. So I'm going to stop talking and say and hand over to you and ask, first and foremost, on the kind of topic of attachment, how did it feel for you to actually go back and explore the paper? And we can introduce the title of the paper in a minute so that
Yeah,
people know what we're talking about.
sure. Yeah, like we obviously had a little brief before we started, just saying how it was, kind of looking back, and I realised that it literally was about a year ago, and it's really interesting because I think a year doesn't seem that long, but actually so much can happen in a year. Obviously at the time, so yeah, we're looking at February 2025, and that was when I was starting to think about the possibility that I could be autistic, and I was kind of looking at sources and looking at maybe referring myself for an assessment, and obviously in this paper it kind of looking at development, and specifically with morals being like the key component. There were a lot of theories that contrasted each other. Some were sort of similar, some kind of overlapped, but one thing that I notice comes up a lot is like the social psychology aspect of like how others in your group or just who you're surrounded with can impact your beliefs about things, but also like the cognitive understanding, so like the ability to, the capacity and the executive function that that individual has it to even understand those things in the first place. And obviously reading it back now, when I wrote it, I probably didn't have as much attachment, where use of that word very much intended. I probably didn't have that much attachment to it, in terms of I was looking at it from an outsider and just you know, the research and what the different theories were and the different psychologists were saying, but looking at it with like a new, I guess, like a new knowledge about myself, I can really see how those things have impacted me as well, and how that even from like childhood, well, being born even, and like getting to where I am now, lots of little things have overlapped, and my brain being the way it is has had a big quite played quite a big part in that, essentially.
Yeah, and so the assignment itself was to critically assess, and everything was a critique, right? You had to
Yeah.
critically evaluate, critically assess um, the relative contributions of cognitive and social psychological approaches to our understanding of moral development in children and across the lifespan. And I think one of the things that I found fascinating, because I studied psychology for my undergraduate 20 years ago, and I chose this specific course because it was for people that hadn't studied psychology before or had studied a similar subject but wanted to convert, right? So it's a conversion course. But it had been so long since I'd actually studied psychology, I wanted to take a fresh view to it and go back in as if it was new to me. And I'm really glad I did, because some of the theories that I really struggled to wrap my head around 20 years ago have moved forward now to a place where it's definitely more interdisciplinary. It's a little bit less kind of, you're either in this school of thought or this school of thought. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that our understanding of moral development has shifted, because for the longest time there's been this misconception that by the time you're an adult, you're this fixed person that cannot change. And we talked about that, I think, right? With the leopards can't change their spots. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And one of the things that I really loved learning and then reflecting on in this is that, yeah, you absolutely can. People never stop learning, their brains never stop evolving. And yes, we lose function over time and certain things regress, like our motor skills, our cognitive skills slow down. But you can learn and adapt and grow, and you can change your mind as well, which I think is
Mm.
something that's really, really important to acknowledge. That as humans, if we take a human approach to it, right, and we look at attachment through evolution, attachment isn't about personality per se, it's about strategy and survival and um, kind of achievement or status and those things, right? And it shows up in family roles, in sibling dynamics, in the workplace, and in friendships. And we've kind of got this lifelong relational template there, but it can change. So I was really excited to see that people acknowledge that now, that it's, oh, actually, yeah, there is brain elasticity and it can be rebuilt and we can do these things. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering, as somebody that did, so you hadn't studied psychology
No.
beforehand, right? And I'm wondering, as somebody that kind of came to it without having that kind of comparison, how you felt both as you were writing, I guess, and now looking back as somebody with that autistic experience that can say, okay, now I can see a little bit of me in this, or maybe I would have approached that differently.
Yeah. So I mean, when I even started the course, I've always had an interest in it, but I'd never really had the opportunity to study it. And I always said if I'd not gone to drama school and stayed on to do like A levels, psychology would have been something that I studied, and then probably actually ended up doing it uni in the first place. But obviously, I decided to take another path. But yeah, I think it's so much more varied than I thought, and there's so many different theories and ways that people can look at things. Just see my cat's amazing in the background, sorry. Um,
I was like,
wow,
oh, adorable.
I know,
Mine does
so
that all the
cute.
time.
But yeah, I didn't quite realize that there were so many ways to look at things. And I think it's like, it just goes back to what you were saying, like it doesn't there's always new things we can learn, and it doesn't mean like one theory's wrong and one's right, or one's more right and one's less right. It's just there are so many ways you can look at things. And I think particularly for that assignment, no, I mean, actually I've got it up, so I'm going to see what I concluded based on what I looked at. So yeah, I basically said that individual experiences originating in like early development and continuing indefinitely is what I said. So again, like we are constantly changing, or like both have a significant impact, which I think is true. Like you are sort of, I think it's interesting that there are kind of quite there are people out there who are quite close-minded, who think, oh well, I was handed this set of cards as a kid, and that's just why I am the way I am, and they'll hold on to that for like the rest of their lives. And I always think that's quite sad, because they've obviously learnt that from somewhere, or they've not been exposed to other ways of thinking or support that they need. But like, I even look back at me a year ago, let alone 5 years ago, and there's things that I didn't know then that I know now, and there's experiences I've had that have shaped me, and all sorts of things. And like, it can be terrifying, but also it's really exciting that like there's always going to be something that happens, and sometimes it's in the most bizarre of situations, and you end up learning a lot about yourself. And at the time, you you don't really understand why things are happening, and then you look back and you're like, oh, actually maybe I just needed that situation to get to where I am now. It was like a step in the road. And I don't mind saying this on the podcast, because I don't think this person will ever listen to it. I don't know if I still exist in their brain, but the whole reason I even started the masters was because I was basically heartbroken by someone that I was really trying to make something work with, and it was never going to work. It was never, ever, ever going to work, because I, it was, it just, the dynamic was not healthy, and it was me doing like 99% of the work, and basically submitting to them, and trying to mold myself into what they wanted. So I lost myself in a lot of it. And it got to a point, this was even before it ended, but I already knew, like, which is interesting, I knew months before it ended that I needed something better. And I said to myself, like, what can I do that's going to keep me occupied, that's going to keep me learning, that's going to be positive? And it sort of was like an ADHD, oh, let's just find this course and do it. And I just like signed up to it one random afternoon, and then got accepted, and then thought, oh, okay, I've just committed to like a 2-year master's, great. But that's why I really, really believe in the butterfly effect, and like everything happens for a reason, because I'm now sat here with a master's that I wouldn't have had I not met this person. And I genuinely believe that. Like, I believe that I had to meet them and be involved with them to trigger me to make that decision, to then, and then obviously I've done that masters, I've met you on it, we're now talking on this podcast. Do you know what I mean? And I really do think, and yeah, I mean, what a tangent. I don't know how I got onto
No, no,
that,
I
but
mean, you said a few really good things in there, and I was making notes, and I want to jump to something that you said, um, which is as like that kind of those relationships that are somewhat consuming, right? And you mentioned how you lose yourself within it, and I've definitely been there as somebody with ADHD that has that dopamine chase, and it's like it becomes like this all-encompassing kind of thing that borders on obsession, but you're not an obsessive person, so it's kind of, I don't know if that's how it is for you. And I think what a lot of us are trying to do is we're trying to belong without losing ourselves. But time and time again, we find ourselves lost in these moments. And then we're standing there in this kind of weird loneliness, because it's not that I didn't necessarily have this thing that I thought I wanted. It's just that it hasn't done for me what I thought it would, and I've had to mask, and I've had to sell my self, not sell, but like sell myself in ways to be this identity that's now just kind of gone away. And
mhm,
then it is like, who am I left after this identity just got stripped from me?
yeah.
So as neurodivergents, we often mask within relationships, within the workplace and things, because it's a safety issue, right? Because unmasked can be really dangerous. People lose jobs, they lose friendships, they are excluded from different things, right? So masking isn't about whether you're authentic or not, it's really about like, how do you keep yourself safe? So does unmasking feel to you maybe that sometimes we risk attachment if we are our authentic selves?
Do you know what? That's a really interesting question, because I feel like I've experienced both. I feel like I've masked to cling on to an attachment, but I also feel like I've had an attachment with someone where I haven't masked to an extent, but I just haven't asked for my needs to be met. And I do think they are two different things. But I think the problem with both comes down to, so I think you can mask, but um, I think you can mask and still be authentic, and I think you can unmask and still not be authentic. Like I think there are like there's sort of like a spectrum of it. Again, use of the words definitely intended, but I think it depends when you're doing it. Like for me, I know when I intentionally mask just because it will make the situation more comfortable in general for me. I actually do it more for me now than anyone else. But also I am just generally really bad at meeting my own needs, because I think one, I've never really known what they are, or been allowed to express what they are or explore what they are. And then when you're suddenly kind of given that permission, I guess, and that like validation of, no, you're not asking for too much, like that is genuinely what you need, it's sort of like you get used to something for so long that it's then terrifying to start doing it. Um, and yeah, I think what it comes down to is if you're, which, and I'm going to say this, and I need to I need to listen to my own advice, but
Don't we
an
all?
attachment is like having an attachment with someone where you're not, where you feel like you're not actually 100% being yourself. It's not real, and is it worth it, basically, to get, because it's never going to be real, is it? It's like you're either like completely self-abandoning to keep this connection, or you're putting so much into it, like you're putting more effort than the other person, which then makes you feel rejected. Well, it does in my case anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's like, are any worth that? Like, no, I would
No.
say instantly.
And I think that that ties into as well that kind of the early social development of when you think about language starting, and they used to think, right, oh, babies around 6 to 8 months start making eye contact and blah blah, and now they're like, no, within 2 to 3 days that baby is starting to process. It knows this voice, it can focus on these things. So those cognitive processes do happen, or they're finding now that they are happening earlier than people expect, now that we've got the science to be able to look inside the brains and different things, right? And the technology to do that. But I think one of the things again that I found interesting was that joint attention theory and the reciprocal relationship, because so much emphasis has been put on mothers being bad mothers to these children, and that's why their children grow up to be cold or distant or whatever it is. And having again gone back through not just the assignment but through the kind of origins of psychology and the theoretical frameworks, it's super fascinating to me that there's an acknowledgement now that the baby actually does play a part in that as well, right? And if there's these expectations, cultural expectations, that when you as a mother have a baby, everything is super happy, everything's perfect, this child will be the most perfect thing in your life, you're going to love it, it's going to love you. You build these images, we're running through the park together, we're doing whatever, right? We're going to parties, I'm dressing you like a princess, whatever it is. And then baby is born with a different type of brain that mother doesn't understand, right? It's there's kind of like an equal share in how that relationship then develops. And that's not to, obviously babies don't have cognition in the same way obviously infants do, or as you grow older, right? And they don't have that moral development or anything yet. But they're like, say a baby's inability to stop crying or to make eye contact, or a baby that doesn't like to be hugged. And I know my mum talks about this a little bit in her writing about my brother, right? That's really difficult to a parent because then they don't know what to do back, right? And i'm I was happy to see that that is being acknowledged now as well, because I think with that progression there will be more support for parents, and especially of neurodivergent children. It's quite possible 50% of those mothers are ADHD, autistic, or something themselves, right? So they're not understanding why these rules don't work for them. But, and like, I don't know if you kind of got into that aspect of the, like, the joint attention and the shared experience within your assignment with that moral development, but I know that was something that I kind of dug it into because I was interested in the fact that, like, we try and align experiences before we form our identities.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, something that stuck out a lot for me, and I think it was in that bit, but I remember like in one of the sections we were watching a video where the the mum was on her phone and like not paying attention to the baby, and then it after a while was kind of it got quite distressed and upset because it like I think it was a little boy, but the kind of calls for attention, and they weren't really cries, but yeah, every like the little whimpers, everything was just sort of like being ignored, and then obviously he got upset, um, and that really stuck with me because I do feel like I see that a lot now, like especially where the world's kind of gone digital. I see a lot of parents out and about on their phones ignoring the child of any age, whether they're like babies, toddlers, a bit older, and I think it's really sad. And for me, I feel like it's difficult because there were a lot of experiences in my childhood that were very good. Like my mum was where she could be very attentive, and she was with at home with us most of the time, um, and there I do have some really good memories of her like, of feeling like seen, heard, and understood. But I feel like there were equally times where I really didn't, and I felt like yeah, I'm not really sure what the right word is, but looking back now, I can see that, okay, well, she obviously, because I think I've said this before, but she's now we've kind of opened up that can of worms. She's looking back and at her life, and we think that she's autistic, and a lot of the things now that where I experienced things in my childhood where I'm like, oh my goodness, like what was that, or why did that happen? I can see as like her being overstimulated, or like for example, she was not a huggy mum at all. She was
Yeah,
not a cuddly mum, and I grew up, which is really interesting because I grew up thinking that was quite normal, and I was okay with it, and I didn't think I was missing anything because I am someone that's like, I don't want just anyone to
yeah,
touch me, and I kind of like want to be able to give consent before you just assume that it's okay. But now I've swung the complete other way, so I'm actually like a natural. I'll go and hug people. I'm like very huggy. I would say that like touch is one of my love languages, which is really interesting because I don't know whether that's because I feel like I was deprived of something that I did actually really want or need and was important to me, or because that I've just developed into like an adult who does actually enjoy that. Um, but yeah, like that, for example, is like I can see why that didn't come naturally to her, and why that would appear or feel almost like cold to someone else, who was part of a family where their mum was really like cuddly. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes like the way people are, or like the dynamics between people, can seem really bizarre to others, and then actually the people in it
yeah.
don't feel like that.
No, and I'm definitely from a family of don't touch me's. Like, the best you're gonna get is an air kiss and a kind of weird little side hug. That, yeah, um, uh, and I am somewhat like that. But I don't mind getting like a really good bear hug. If
Hmm.
you're gonna hug me, I need you to bear hug me. Don't like stroke my arm or something, because I'll probably hit you in the face, and not because I'm trying to be horrible, but because it's like the sensitivity
Yeah.
levels, just that it's like it feels painful. But if you like bear hug me and just like hold me and squeeze me and maybe crack my back while you're at it, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. That's great. Squeeze a bit harder, get some clicks in there. But yeah, I'm okay hugging people that I've met for the first time and whatever, and I'm talking like fully clothed. Oh, hey, how you doing? Give you a hug or whatever. But yeah, I have to tell myself that not everybody likes that. So I find myself hugging people sometimes that I'm like, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have just done that. It's like total invasion of your space. I was just really happy to see you. But yeah, if my family are definitely not like that. My mum, when I took her to Burning Man, definitely had a moment when she got hugged on Tutu Tuesday by a man wearing a tutu and nothing else.
Oh.
And we were in the same camp, and in the morning he was like, oh, good morning, Sue, and hugged her, and she's like, Lois, he just hugged me and he's not got any pants on. I'm like, and he's wearing a tutu. I'm like, well, it's Tutu Tuesday, mum. But if you don't
Ah.
want men to hug you with the cock and balls out, then please just tell them, hey, I'm not a hugger, personal space, and they'll respect that.
Yeah. No, I can relate. I think I'd have had the same reaction.
She was all right though. She chilled a bit after that. By Wednesday, Thursday, she was totally fine. Um, so throughout this conversation, I think like a theme that runs through it is that identity is definitely relational, and we learn who we are by seeing how we fit or don't fit into relationships and groups, right? And it's kind of like those attachment styles that we learn early on do have a really big impact on us. But I think you said this right, like as you become an adult, there are things that you can do to unlearn it. And um that's a whole other paper between fixed thinking, that's the cognitive styles. Right, we're not going to get into that, the big five personalities and all of that jazz. All Nazi propaganda from back in the day, right, that we still use
Yeah.
today to miscategorize people in the workplace. Whole other story I'll talk about in another episode. But yes, it's I think it's interesting to kind of see or understand that we can actually change those things. And I think for me, living in New York City, because it's this kind of place that people come to find their dreams, like especially in America, right? If like you're the best of the best in your field, you want to go to the place that represents your industry, whether that's like Chicago, New York, California, like LA, San Francisco, depending, right? You've got Colorado is like huge for technology. And so we've got these hubs all over America. And if you're really good at what you do, you tend to want to go to one of those places. But what I find here and what I notice a lot is as people come here, they do relearn these generational traumas, and they do let them go with the family that they find here. And from like, I mean, you met Chrisana, he's definitely part of my like found family here. Um, but and I knew him before 2008.
Thanks for thinking out loud with us today. This conversation doesn't end here. In part two, we go deeper into identity, belonging, and how we can begin rewriting relational patterns in adulthood. As always, you are unlabeled and your potential is limitless.